All right, so, all right, here we are. Let's read 31, 26 through 32. Somebody read that, and then we'll get going here.
And Laban said to Jacob, "What have you done? You have stolen away unawares to me, and carried away my daughters as captives, taken with the sword. Wherefore did you flee secretly, and steal away, and turn me, and did not tell me, that I might have sent you away with mirth, and with songs, and with tabret," there's a good word for you out of the King James, "and with harp, and has not suffered me to kiss my sons and my daughters? You have now done foolishly in doing this. It is in the power of my hand to do you hurt. But the God of your father spoke to me last night, saying, Take heed that you do not speak to Jacob either good or bad. Now, though you would need to be gone, because you are, James is really rough in here. Because thou art launched after thy father's house, yet wherefore hast thou stolen my gods? And Jacob answered and said to Laban, Because I was afraid, for I said, Peradventure, thou wouldst take by force your daughters from me. With whomsoever thou findest your gods, let him not live. Before our brethren, discern thou what is yours with me, and take it with you. For Jacob knew not that Rachel had stolen.
Okay, good. Thank you. Thanks for your emphasis in reading that, Dave. That was good.
Yeah.
And we almost understood most of that. So with the King James. Yeah, are you aware they have other versions?
Yeah. This would be a section where I would go to.
Okay. And Dave, thanks for reading through 32. I've saved 31 and 32 till next time, because I want to focus in at that point on Jacob's response, which I think is quite amazing. And it really fits in what our whole theme is. But so today we're actually going to look at verse 30 through verse 30. I've got 32 up there, but that's a mistake. I should have had 30. But anyway, regardless, no charge for that. So by way of review, Arthur reminded week 88.
That's up there on the screen.
Why do I feel like shrinking here? So what we're looking at last time is we're looking at this meeting of father-in-law and son-in-law. And remember, the context of that meeting is that Laban was in hot pursuit for up to 7 days and overcame Jacob and the party in the very area where he was seeking refuge, which is so ironic and so applicable to what we're doing. There's a whole play and dynamics working out here on one level, but what we want to think about here today is what is happening behind the scenes, and where is God in all of this, and how does God relate in these situations? Which, guys, we've all been in tight spots. We've all sought refuge in the hills of Gilead, thinking that we will be safe in some situation. But I think through God's grace intervening and causing us to face those very things that are keeping us from moving ahead in greater trust with God. I mean, this is a whole interesting story of how life works and our experience in this whole thing. What is happening here in this ancient text is very much what has happened and will happen in our lives. So that's why we're spending this time in this. It's a wonderful story. And so in this exchange, remember, Laban is one torqued off guy. But God intervenes on the very night before he overtakes his son-in-law. God says, be careful. Be careful what you say to this guy. We could discuss why, but obviously God has a bigger picture in this whole thing. So Laban comes, and there's this interaction right here. The meeting, Act 1 here. And Laban's first words are questions. Why and what? And questions, last time we looked at questions as the idea of to dislodge thinking. We've used questions. We've received questions. When you go to you go to someone and you ask why or what, it's designed to dislodge their thinking. What were you thinking is what he's saying. Trying to dislodge that, which is such a hard thing in itself. So dislodgement is that first idea here. Then he goes on and he says, why did you, and this is, we're looking at 26 through 28. And then he says, once thinking is dislodged, then why did you do this to me? You've kept me from throwing a large party where we could have released your family in blessing, and we could have done this and we could have done that. And you, by screwing up, messed this whole thing up, and my life is miserable. Haven't you heard this? Haven't you done this? Okay. Well, it's accusation. So dislodgement and then accusation. And then we move to this whole idea of judgment. And I really had some fun with this, thinking about what is judgment. And so what my picture here is depicting is you take these first two components, dislodgement and accuse, and frame it somehow. Well, I could have used just a picture frame. But I chose a puzzle piece because this is actually going to fit into something bigger. You frame it. Guys, in our heads, someone, you've got to be guilty of this. Because I'm guilty of it. How many times have we heard something and it just tips off a memory in our mind? You always say that. You always do that. You always, is that not true? Yeah, we guys, this is how we operate as human beings. No one is exempt. We do this. We frame things. And I think it goes back to because we're made in the image of God. We're made in the image of God, and we naturally want to categorize and organize all things in a perspective, and so we can make sense out of things. So we want to make sense out of these things. So we frame it, and then the last piece in judgment, that's like point A in framing. And then the last thing is, once we frame it, we categorize it. And I'm using the picture of puzzle pieces. We have an innate desire as human beings to frame things and to place them in relation to other things. Another way I could have depicted this graphically is we all have bookshelves in our heads, and we want to take, or file cabinet might even be more accurate, where we file everything in an organized way. And over times, we build large files on certain people, our spouses, our kids, to the point where it's very hard for our spouses or our kids to act outside of how we have framed them. Because, we're there to clamp. Me. Okay, let's just say it's me, okay? I said you guys got to be guilty of this. Well, maybe once or twice, but I'm guilty of this all the time. Okay, that's what we talked about last time. So to move through the text further, here's my little picture of where we've gone in 29, or actually 26 and 28. And now we're going to move to, this is 26 and 28. Now, he does an interesting thing here. He kind of, after this dislodge, accuse, and judge, the hammer, Laban pulls off a little bit. And then that's the happy face. That's the happy face. And part of this is motivated by God's intervention the night before. He says, okay, now that I have you where I want to have you, and notice Laban is bigger, speaking down. Laban is in the position of power. Now that I have you under my thumb, he didn't say this, I have power over you. But God said, be careful. Okay, this is how he says it. And then I put in the happy phase, because now he eases back. He says, I understand why you want to go back. That was a nice thing to say. Kind of reminds me of when my teenage kids came to me and said, Dad, I know where you're coming from. Okay. Whole tongue. But, right up here, I know where you're coming from, Jacob. But, and then he goes right back down and says, why did you steal my gods? I mean, this is a whole fun thing in itself. And he reverts back in 29 through 30 to the whole thing of question, dislodge, accusation, why did you steal my gods, and judgment. There has been no court session here. Laban is going right to judgment here and said, obviously you are the ones that stole my God. Well, they did, although Jacob is innocent. As the text reads, Jacob was unaware of what Rachel had done. But, just kind of an aside here. This whole thing, in Laban's mind, if I have my household gods, I am powerful. If I don't have my household gods, I am less powerful. And this thinking is so much a part of us as human beings. If I have Jesus, I am powerful. I take my Jesus and I, almost like a genie in a bottle, I rub God and I want things from God. Now, this is really a crass way to explain prayer, but it is so dominant in our way of thinking. We go to God because we want something from God. And what is so interesting, this just depicts it in a very realistic and material sense. They actually had a household god. They had something they would sit on the fireplace. And this is our God, see, right here. And when the God is here, we've got this magical halo, we've got this magical bubble of protection around our house. Oh, the God's gone. Gee, and you stole my God. What kind of thinking is that, where God is something that sits on a fireplace, and when I have God near me, I am powerful, and like the genie bottle. And I rub the genie bottle and out pops an answer. Or I put in a dime and out pops a gumball, whatever I need. And then when we don't get it, then we think God is not there anymore. God, where are you, God? This thinking, and I think, is just a basic human perception of how we got God. God is not a genie bottle. God does not sit on a fireplace. And God is powerful. God is all powerful, whether we have him in our possession. We don't possess God. Yes?
I think Laban is trying to heap a lot of guilt on Jacob. And,
I agree, yeah.
He said, if you just let me know, I would have thrown a big going away party and had food and music and everything.
Right.
I don't think he would have.
No, I agree.
But he enlarged this just to put more guilt. And I think sometimes we do that to win an argument. We think, oh, you know, I would have done it this way and I would have done it so much better.
I think you're exactly right.
I'm guilty of that.
Dick, I think you're exactly right. We like the idea of being in the position of power, where it becomes about winning the argument, not about healing the relationship. It really does. That is the point of all this, is that there is something innate within us that has to win. And through the power of Christ, guys, that has to die. That's got to die. And it takes a long time, maybe a lifetime. But that is what we're talking about, is this: he saw a doorway and he took it. And even though God is in the picture, God said, and I'm aware of that, Laban still is blowing it out of proportion. I couldn't agree with you more. There is nothing in Laban that would have thrown a party. He was there to possess. His intention was to possess Jacob, because whenever Jacob was around, he was successful and he could go play golf. I don't think. So there's that. That's.
He was guilty of trickery himself in this relationship with Jacob, and now he's saying Jacob tricked him.
Yeah.
So what goes around comes around.
It is, and we called it earlier, one of the earlier sessions, a dance. These guys are dancing around each other, and they're both masters at what they're good. These guys are good. Well, I've been good at times too with this stuff. So anyway, the observation. I built this sandwich here, and this is the idea of how I see the text, and. Right here is that you got this top bun, and in verse 26 through 28, he dislodges, he accuses, and then he judges. So there was blast. It's like the bun blast. Then you've got the center part here, and there's a wonderful burger in there, and a tomato and some lettuce, and that's juicy. That's a happy face. What's that?
And marinated onions.
Yeah. My memory's pretty short. I'm thinking of last week, our bun up there at Christ in the Rockies, Bob's barbecue bun there, and that's the happy face. He puts this nice happy face in there, backs off a little bit, but then is the other side of the bun, the bottom bun, again, dislodge, accuse, and judge. Guys, we're just having fun with this, so. What's ironic about this is when they teach you how to do job evaluations or how to criticize. Probably many of you've done job evaluations. How are we doing? Always come in, they sit down and say, "Boy, Martha, you've just done such a great job and contribute." You always start out with the positive stuff. The positive stuff you're supposed to, and then kind of midway in there, and you always really go very carefully and quickly with this, is you do the criticism. And then right on the heels of that, then you go on the positive side, the bottom. It's actually viewed as a sandwich, where you have something positive, and then you got your criticisms, and percentage-wise, it's like 10-1. And then on the bottom is you because you don't want to crush people. Criticism is hard to take, and it really. So Laban's approach here is totally opposite. He does the bun blast, and the middle part is the good part, and then he does the bottom bun blast. So here's my point. Observation. This is so human, typical, and relatable, at least to me. And but behind the scenes, there's more going on. There's more going on here than just this human interaction. And the question then is, where's God? Where is God in this picture? You know, we know God is there because he raised his voice in the prior text through the warning. God is involved here. Well, at least to some degree. Yes.
It seems this interesting dynamic where Laban has these gods on his
Fireplace.
mantle or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then Rachel hijacks those dudes. And then, but then he says in verse 26, he says, the God of your father. So he recognized, you know, something other than his little physical God idols. And he recognized the God of Jacob's father,
Yeah.
which is kind of interesting.
What is your thought? That is very interesting. What is your thought on that?
I'm still trying to process it because I just picked it up a minute ago.
Could it be that our concept of I talk too much. Go ahead, you.
I think Laban is a classic case of an agnostic.
Oh,
And I think Jacob is yet to understand really who his God is. And I think we've got coming up here a classic case. We all go back to the day at the well when he saw Rachel and went head over heels, but spiritually he didn't do a check on who he was falling in love with. And there's so much relevance to that in contemporary society about becoming unequally yoked, and he's about to find out, because I read ahead, that all is not as he thought it was with Rachel. So there's some real underlying spiritual things going on.
It is.
Which is really kind of an example in our intercourse with others. We need to try to be carefully discerning about who people are really referring to as their God. Who do they mean?
Yeah.
There's God and then there's God, you know? And there's a lot of that going on.
so as we drill down on this, to add on to what Dave was saying, I didn't realize that the reason Rachel took those idols was because they were important to her, but she felt they were important to her father also. So yeah, the unequal yoke thing definitely comes into the picture here.
Yeah, and I've kind of took it from one or two or mixed reasons. One, her father, I believe, hurt her because of the dialogue between Leah and Rachel. Our father has basically disowned us. That was their perception. And so it could be out of hurt, but also she's raised in that family. If we have the gods, we're powerful. You know, when I have a God, I'm powerful. When I don't have the God, I'm not powerful. Let's take the gods. And so anyway, we've had some brief discussion on this, and so I kind of came up with this little scale here. Where is God? And I want to get to the next slide, but clear down at the bottom, we would say, well, gee, God is not involved in this. I don't think any of us would vote down here. And then maybe some of us are here. God is in heaven, just shaking his head. God, don't you get it? Or God is somehow using this somehow and kind of maybe in a sense watching what goes on and then kind of recalculates, like Siri does on your phone when you make, you want Siri is trying to send you from Laurel to Shields and then down south on Shields, and you just don't want to go there, so you go from Laurel to College, and Siri, you know what I'm talking about, Siri says, well, recalculating, and then sends you another way. Maybe God is more, kind of using it and recalculating, or is God actually more engaged in an active sense and got everything the way it is? I mean, he's using this for a larger purpose than one step ahead. And I would beg, I'm for me, it's more up here. God doesn't dictate, but there is a bigger picture involved. There's just a bigger picture involved. So at least from my perspective. And so this week, as we we kind of move on here. And we'll meet next week. No, will we meet next week? Yeah, the 4th is this week. So we'll meet next week. Yeah, we'll be here next week. So here's a question for you as we wrap up here. And all of us, I'm assuming everyone in this room has had some experience with this idea of judgment. Exactly what the core of this little text is all about. Laban is judging Jacob. And we've talked a lot about this. And it is my impression that all of us have either been on the receiving end of judgment, where we have felt judged by another individual, or we have judged. And I would venture to say most of us have been on both sides. We know what it's like to be judged. I certainly do. And I know what it's like to judge. And so as you are thinking about to identify an occasion where you experience judgment, and here is the side where you've had an active role, right here, where you framed, you categorized, and there was some sort of outcome. That's what I'd like you to think about is, what was that outcome? Or where judgment took place and you were on the receiving end, you passive means you received it. There was a framing involved. How were you framed? And of course, your first thought is it's unfair. And how were you categorized? Has anybody ever lived under this thing where you feel like you're under constant judgment from another individual, and no matter what you do, it's a lose? You just can't overcome it? Well, you're exactly right. You can't. There is nothing you can do to win that back until something changes in that person, because they've got you so framed and so categorized that there's virtually nothing you do. Now, of course, your response is I can go fetal, I can give up, I can say what the heck with it, I'm not going to keep trying to, or something deeper can happen within you to actually forgive, which releases a tremendous amount of power. And even though you're the one being judged, we have opportunity to go deeper and to actually extend forgiveness in a powerful way, and that in an amazing way releases a tremendous amount of love. I can't remember. No, that was it. So anyway, that was just it. I was going to have you guys sit in your groups at tables to discuss this and just describe an occasion where you either pass judgment or receive judgment, and to think through that in this light of framing, categorizing, and then outcome. What was the outcome? Probably the outcome is never positive, but I don't know. All right, that's it for this week. We'll get to next week, and I promise we'll go on at glacial speed next week.